the government cannot suppress speech it doesn't like.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of the First Amendment Museum's one-on-one interview series. The First Amendment Museum is a nonpartisan nonprofit located in Augusta, Maine. My name is Max Nospish, and I'm the manager of visitor experiences. Today, I'm welcoming Marc J. Randazza, a First Amendment attorney and political commentator. Marc J. Randazza is the managing partner of his law firm and spends the majority of his time in beautiful Las Vegas. He is a nationally known First Amendment and intellectual property owner who has defended clients as varied as political extremists, protesters, adult film stars, Klingon language enthusiasts, the Satanic Temple, among others. So Marc, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So why do you think the First Amendment is important? What is its purpose?
There are various theories of free speech that we look at when we think about, why do we want to protect it? Of course, the primary goal of it is so that we can have a constitutional republic. You can't have a self-governing society if people can't engage in debate, discussion on matters of public interest and of public importance. But then there's other theory to it. Is simply a matter of self-realization as a human being. Who am I if I am not my thoughts? What am I if I am not my expression? You talk to people who come from societies where freedom of expression was heavily curtailed, and it just feels like it acts like a straitjacket on your psyche. So it's a multi-pronged thing that I think was just a brilliant idea that the founders put in there to protect it with such vigor and in such language that it would grow to really be a robust, it's a human right, but it's also a utilitarian right. Let's put it that way.
So can you tell me about your involvement with Herman School Department versus McBriarty?
Yes. Now, there are actually two McBriarty cases I'm handling in Maine, Herman and RSU 22. And both of them are related. Mr. McBriarty is an educational activist, and he has views that he believes that school books and books recommended by the school should be less sexualized than some of those which are currently being promoted. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure I 100% agree with him, but I 100% agree with his right to advocate about that. The New England town meeting is always put forward as the greatest example of democracy that exists in the world. And I'd say the small town school committee is another example. Herman did not like his advocacy and didn't like the commentary that he was making about the school committee. So they sued him to try to get an injunction from the court. Now, this is to try to get the court to say, essentially, that he can no longer advocate. He can no longer write about this. He can no longer talk about them. That's called a prior restraint. And as you can see right here in this scene, Big Lebowski, this is the scene where Walter Sobchak yells, "The Supreme Court has roundly rejected prior restraint," which is is an accurate statement. So you don't gag somebody simply because what they say is troubling to you. New York Times Sullivan says that part of the price of being a public official is that you have to deal with vehement and sometimes caustic attacks on you. No one's going to be 100% popular as a politician. And it doesn't matter if you're the president of the United States or somebody who's on the Waterways Committee in Gloucester, Massachusetts. From high to low, there's always going to be somebody who dislikes you, and that's what democracy is about. That's what a self-governing constitutional republic is about.
So what are some of the possible or already ramifications of Herman School Department versus McBriarty? And why should the average person care about these cases?
Well, so far now in Herman, they filed this complaint against him and sought this injunction, and we invoked the Maine anti-SLAPP law. Now, Maine has a very poor anti-SLAPP law, and it generally only applies to petitioning activity. But here, they are trying to restrain him from petitioning. So if you're anybody in Maine and you think you might want to disagree with anyone who's in power now or who might be in power later, you don't want this case to come out in favor of the government, because somebody speaking either truth to power or criticizing power could find themselves similarly restrained. So, I mean, I've been doing this long enough that, I remember when it was largely people who you'd consider more right-wing or conservative suppressing the voices of left-wing people. I remember there would be similar efforts like this to stop people from advocating for equality for gay people, or equality for racial minorities or transsexuals. I mean, this was a tool that was used by the right against the left for a long time. The more I dislike what somebody has to say, the more I love their First Amendment case. Because when I can sit there in front of a judge and say to the judge, when the judge will say, well, Mr. Randazza, why on earth is your client saying these terrible things? And I can say, Your Honor, I'd like nothing more than my client to shut up voluntarily. But if the government tries to shut him up, then we have a real problem, a problem far greater than any consequence of anything he might have to say. The government cannot suppress speech it doesn't like.
You've often protected the First Amendment rights of people that could, maybe, probably would be considered unpopular or controversial. Some might argue you shouldn't do this, and why do you do it? And what would you say to the people that say you shouldn't do it?
Look, I this is a calling for me, and I don't say that egotistically. I say that I'm here for one reason and one reason only, and that is to protect freedom of expression. That's what I was tapped to do divinely. And I don't mean, like the Blues Brothers. I might be a degenerate. That'd be a fair thing to call me, a vulgarian, a libertine, but I'm on a mission from God. And I thought about this a lot. I always think about, am I doing the right thing? And I think, and someone did ask me before, why do you represent terrible people? Like, I've represented a Nazi. And when I got the call from that Nazi, I sort of had that a moment thinking, who better? Whose speech rights better to defend? Because look, if it's Dr. Seuss, who cares? And if I can protect Mr. Rogers' free speech rights, are you any more free? But when we have so much tolerance for speech in this country, we have so much tolerance for speech under our Constitution that even Nazi is protectable, even their speech is protected, then everyone's is protected. And if you say everyone except this one bad thought, this one bad guy, once you start making exceptions, the second exception is a lot easier to make, and the third is easier. So do I think that Nazi had anything of value to say? No, I don't agree with a word he says. However, his speech is as valuable as Martin Luther King's speech, and sometimes even more so. And I don't mean that to denigrate MLK, but I say that even the negative example speaker is a great value to us in a society that values free expression. And also, if he can publish and speak, he's going to be that much less radicalized. I mean, how radicalized can you be against a system that lets you say anything you want? And I think that we run that risk when we suppress voices. We run the risk of them being driven into more of an echo chamber where they can become more dangerous.
Thinking about again this sort of topic, you've often represented adult film stars, and
Yep.
We've had similar conversations here at the museum, and undecided. Is it important to defend the First Amendment rights of adult film stars? Many people say what they do is obscene. They might even say it doesn't contribute meaningfully in any way to our society. How would you respond to them?
If somebody who says that is truly so divinely inspired that they know what contributes and what doesn't, and they can show me that, then I will absolutely take their word for it. I lack that divine inspiration. Looking at, if we want to weigh the value of speech, look, it either is speech or it isn't speech. It is expression or it isn't. One person's vulgarity is another person's lyric. That comes from Cohen versus California. I would say that it is of less value than political speech, but the First Amendment doesn't care.
Well, Marc, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to everyone who tuned in. If you like our one-on-one series, don't forget to like and subscribe to the First Amendment Museum's channel on YouTube for more.
All right, my pleasure.